The Australian Law Reform Commission remains one of Australia's institutional treasures. For immigrants, it represents the greatest gift a welcoming country can offer, a clear signal that their new country invites its citizens, old and new alike, to become familiar with the law, to examine it, and to identify their expectations in it. Importantly, the Commission dialogues with citizens, asking them to participate in adjustment of the law to fit better with emerging social and cultural expectations. The notion of multiculturalism as participation, shaped by the Ethnic Affairs Commission of New South Wales in 1977, was an epiphany for many immigrants. In the 70s, multiculturalism was, at first, a cautious invitation to cultures in Australia to tolerate each other. By the 1980s, reference to multiculturalism saw unprecedented participation in politics, in local government, in the formulation of education and health policy, and of course, accompanying laws. For many immigrants, it was a defining moment in our modern political history. That the result was, at times, disappointing at the law reform level can only act as an incentive to the Australian Law Reform Commission. It must continue to be pioneering, engaged, eager to pick up issues that are new and perhaps controversial, and to explain and dissect them in law, explaining in good faith and with practical viewpoints what needs reform. The exemplary reports produced over many years by the Commission show that at times difficult information must be allowed to percolate, goodwill to grow, until the nation is well informed enough, mature enough to embrace what change is really needed. There is one area of, quote, law, quote, that I, like so many others, am vexed by, stumped even. I refer to religious law, the ethical and practical codes of religious tradition, such as Christian canon law, Islamic Sharia, Jewish halakha, and others. Let me explain. In 2011, there were about 500,000 fellow citizen Muslims in Australia, with numbers growing. We can be sure there will be one day 1 million Australian citizens whose culture is shaped, even ruled and driven by Islam. And yet, as a nation, we are ignorant. We know so very little about the ancient beliefs that define our ancestral cultures, including the Muslim. Perhaps this falls into the realm of religious law, and is therefore outside the remit of the Australian Law Reform Commission. But the reality is that when we speak of Quranic law, we refer to Sharia, usually through a prism of ignorance and prejudice. The consequences of such public discourse on the minds of young Australian Muslims who grow up in a Western culture, hearing negatives about their own, are being seen already. Young Australians, subjects of Australian law, should not grow up with such negative baggage. And I'm asking, is it beyond the bounds of possibility for the Australian Law Reform Commission to take a leadership role in explaining, educating, and informing Australians on how religious cultural laws of all beliefs, such as Quranic law, can live peacefully within the nation's system of law? Paolo Totaro, March 2015.